blessing blockers in our lives because, of course, if we're going to prosper and we're going to be blessed, we have to remove those things that are hindering us and those things that are working against us, those things that cause us to stumble and fall, and the restraints and the liberties or being the liberty where God has set us free, and get rid of the restraints and the limitations and the boundaries that hold us from becoming extraordinary. And there are giants in our life, and these giants make us think that we're less than. And I'm reminded this morning of the story of David and Goliath. And for years, I've understood David being the underdog. I've understood David being the little shepherd boy with an impossible situation. Well, I don't quite see it that way anymore. As I study, and I want you to look with me with the story of David and Goliath. And I want to continue the series this morning on the blessing blockers and how to live life powerfully and how to overcome and how to be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, how to conquer demons and devils and demonic activity and walk in victory and walk as an overcomer and walk in your greatness today. So go with me, if you would, to 1 Samuel chapter 17. Let's look at verse 23. Let's read.
And as he walked, as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?
Stop right there. Okay, I want you to get this story here. Now, everyone lived in the mountains. And in the mountains were the safe place. It was a safe haven. But the armies wanted to come against Israel, and they wanted to conquer and take over the territory and split the kingdom. And in order to do that, they had to win, and this was a battle against the nations. Yes. And so with this battle against the nation, they would come down to the valley, to the plain, and have a combat, a one-on-one, and whoever wins, they are the victor. Yes. And so Saul was looking for someone to send down to fight the Philistines, and he couldn't find anyone. So he says, listen, I'll offer up a reward. I'll offer up the person that takes out him. Hey, his house will be paid for. He won't have to worry about any money. He don't have to worry about his light bill or anything, his mortgage. And plus, he's going to get my beautiful daughter. So here is a opportunity for those who want to get tired of living in poverty or living without. Here's an opportunity to live large and big. And so David, because of his experience and because of his relationship with God, David saw an opportunity. And you know, we see David as this guy that was young and impossible to conquer Goliath, and he's the underdog. Well, I'm not so sure that that is the case, because here this big galoot giant comes down. He can't hardly see well. He's so awkward, got all of this armor on, and he's dressed, has swords and spears and all of this. And he's so big that they had to, the scripture says they had to lead him by the hand, had to lead him down to the place of battle. And David, swift and moves fast, trained, an expert with a slingshot. Now, not the slingshot that we know today that I played with. There was this slingshot that I played with that you put a rock in it and you pull it back on a rubber band, pow! Not that kind of slingshot. David was a skilled slinger. Now, a slinger was one that had the ability to put a rock in this device of his, in this sleeve, or this device, I should say. And the slinger could take this rock, and they were so skilled at it that they could just swerve round and around and around. And in midair, bam, knock down a bird. They were just that skillful. Well, David was that kind of guy. But we don't understand that. We see David as this poor, ruddy kid that's going to go up against this big old giant. Even Saul saw him like that because the whole strategy was to fight him at a distance, but that was David's strategy. But the way it was designed was that David was to do one-on-one combat. So the reason why it was so amazing for David, this little kid, to get close to this big giant that says, "Come to me," who had a difficult time even seeing. He was, you know how you have those big individuals that in reality there's some handicap to them because he was 7 foot tall, 7 feet tall, big, huge guy. And so now he says, "Come to me," tell David, "so I can take your life or so I can kill you." But David was smart enough to fight him in a distance, because history says that David was the underdog, but in reality, David was a skilled individual. He was an anointed individual, and he knew that God had his best intentions at heart, and he knew the reward that was available to him. I'm here to tell you today, if you're going to conquer over the blessing blockers that want to hinder you, you got to see the reward for conquering them. Because if you don't see a benefit in it, you will never, never conquer it. If you just see, well, I got to just do this here. I got to live for God. God, I got to live, and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to shoot my best shot. Well, you're not going to do well. But when you see the reward in your victory, when you see the benefit of your victory, when you see yourself conquering in the midst of difficulties, and you see the benefit plain, then you'll rise to the occasion. Because David says, "Where is that uncircumcised giant? Where is that rascal? Because I'm coming. He may come to me with swords and sticks and spears, but I'm coming, and I'm coming in the name of the Lord." Let's read verse 32.
Verse 32. And David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." And David said unto Saul, "Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear and a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God.
Stop right there. So now here he jumps up and says, after he hears the benefit of it, David jumps up and says, hey, I'll fight him. And so Saul says, hey, you're just a little kid. You can't do that. And so David says, I'm going to give you my armor. I'm going to put it on you, and I'm going to send you out, and you're going to fight with my armor because mine's anointed. And so David puts on the armor, and comes to find out, David realizes that this armor is not going to fit him. He realized that it hadn't been proven. In other words, I hadn't done anything with this armor. Plus, my strategy is not to get close to that rascal. My strategy is to fight him at a distance. So he said, this armor has not been proven. And he says, but you know what? I want you to know I'm ready to do battle. I'm ready to conquer him. I'm ready to defeat him. Because I remember how God was for me. I remember that God was on my side. I remember back in the day when I was out there with the sheep, and the sheep was out there by himself, and that bear came along, and that lion came and began to grab him and had him in his mouth. And I went over and I got so angry at him, and I said, you bear, you lion, let him loose, and ripped him apart. And he said, I remember how God anointed me. I remember my past victories. I remember how I overcame. I remember how I conquered. And I'm here to tell you today, you got to remember your past victories. When all hell is breaking loose in your life, when all hell is unfolding in your life, and there's trials and there's difficulty, and you're facing a difficult time, you got to remember the past victories, how God brought you out in times past. You got to remember how God was for you. You got to remember that if God is for you, everybody else might as well be. You might as well then know that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or think, according to his power that's ready and willing and able to work with you. And you can rise as an overcomer and strong in God and the power of his might, because you're going to have on the whole armor of God to stand against demons and devils. You're going to get dressed for success. You're going to get dressed to impress, and you're going to be dressed better than the rest. Somebody ought to put those hands together and give God praise. So he remembered his past victories. So often we forget what God has done for us. So often we get present to the circumstances, and it paralyzes us and freezes us from seeing what's possible, seeing that God is able, seeing that God was with us before, seeing what God did for Reverend Dr. R.J. Lightsey, seeing what God has done for Reverend Michael Davis in time. But God is no respecter of person. If he brought him out, he'll bring me out. I know that God is for me, and I know that God will see me through, because if he loves Dr. R.J. Lightsey, he's no respecter of person. If he loved Michael Davis, he's no respecter of person. God loves me, and what he's done for them, I'm next in line. Glory be to God.